Tonight, Donald Trump stakes his claim on the Republican nomination.
As far as I'm concerned, it's over. These two guys cannot win.
And Senator Ted Cruz makes a huge announcement.
If I am nominated to be President of the United States, that I will run on a ticket with Vice Presidential nominee Carly Fiorina.
Newt Gingrich is here tonight to react to all of it. And then all eyes are now on Indiana in the battle for the Hoosier State.
Last night was Donald Trump's night. Today is Indiana's day.
Herman Cain and Dr. Benjamin Carson, they're here to weigh in on the 2016 race. Plus, Donald Trump unveils his foreign policy agenda in a major speech.
And then there's ISIS. Their days are numbered.
Hannity starts right here, right now.
And welcome to Hannity. Now, Donald Trump is one step closer towards securing the Republican nomination after sweeping all 5 races last night in the battle for the East and the Mid-Atlantic. And tonight, the Republican candidates are descending on the state of Indiana, where 57 very important delegates are now up for grabs on the GOP side. Donald Trump was in the Hoosier State earlier today campaigning with legendary basketball coach, the one and only Bobby Knight. Take a look.
You know, normally they come out, they introduce Trump. Here, I'm coming out, and I'm going to introduce Bobby Knight, okay?
And they talk about, he isn't presidential. I don't know what the hell that means. I think the most important thing in the world is that we vote for the best man there is for this job, and you've already met him.
We had a big night last night. We had 5. Oh, we're going to build that wall, and you know who's going to pay for that wall?
And earlier today, Senator Ted Cruz made a big announcement announcing that Carly Fiorina would be his choice for vice president if he should win the nomination. Watch this.
Carly is a vice presidential nominee who I believe is superbly skilled, superbly gifted at helping unite this party, bring us together so we stand united as one.
This fight is about far more than a ticket. This fight is about far more than Ted Cruz and Carly Fiorina. This is a fight for all of us. For our party, for our future, for our children's future.
Here now with reaction, the author of the New York Times bestseller Duplicity, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, good to see you. Big day today.
It's good to see you. Well, it is a big day, and actually, I'm talking to you from Purdue, where I'm also involved in giving a talk and seeing what's happening in Indiana. All
right, well, let's talk about Indiana. Let's start with Ted Cruz's announcement. Carly Fiorina. I thought Carly, by the way, was a great candidate. She aggressively was able to prosecute the case against Hillary Clinton, I think stronger than some of her male counterparts. Does this help Ted Cruz?
Oh, I think at the margin it might help him. Carly Fiorina is a very smart person. She understands technology and the evolution of the modern world probably as well as anybody running for president in either party. I thought she was very effective on the debate stage. And this is a little bit parallel to what Ronald Reagan tried in 1976 when he was trailing Gerald Ford, and so he announced his vice presidential choice. Didn't happen to work. But it was, again, throwing a Hail Mary pass at the last moment of the game. I think Cruz, by doing this, is a little daring. You know, if you lose 5 states, to come back the next day and announce your vice presidential nominee may not be the best timing. But you can understand why. He's got to shake the game up. And this was a serious effort to try to shake up the game. Because if it keeps going the way it is now, he will lose and Trump will be the nominee.
Let's talk about Donald Trump's reaction in a town hall earlier today with our colleague and friend Greta Van Susteren. He was asked about this move by Ted Cruz. Here's what he said.
Well, I think it's really a waste of time, honestly. I think it should be over. If Indiana treats us right, we're going to make America great again. We're going to get rid of these politicians. And we're going to do the right job. I just think it's so early in the process. You have to first get the nomination. Here's a guy picking a vice presidential candidate. He has 0 chance. He has no path. It's sort of crazy. So I think it's, it gets him in the news cycle because he's been totally taken out. You know, he had a horrible day yesterday, and he came in 3rd, meaning 3rd out of 3 most of the time. most of the, I guess 4 out of 5, he was third. And he picked up no delegates. And, you know, you're talking about major states like Pennsylvania, like Maryland. I mean, we're talking about big stuff. And Connecticut. He came in, he got nothing. And I think he wanted to do something to get out of that negative cycle. And in that sense, it was probably good for him. But people will not like it.
Now, the Trump delegate count is at 950. Let me ask you this question. But it also seems, remember, he won 17 bound delegates in Pennsylvania, but there were 54 unbound delegates. My analysis today gets him at least 40 more of the 54 available. So it brings him very close to 1,000. Is that now unbeatable, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know that it's totally unbeatable. Again, everybody's allowed to play out the game, whether it's basketball and you're in the last seconds of the fourth quarter, or it's football and you're right down to the end of the game. You still get to play. And the team that's behind still gets its at-bat in the ninth inning. But the fact is, Trump is way ahead. Probably better than a 90% likelihood he's going to be the nominee now. And I think you find that there are people who analyze this every single day who are reaching a conclusion. He overperformed yesterday. He got at least 40 more delegates than he needed to be on track to get the nomination. If he wins Indiana, it is for all practical purposes over, because at that point you've closed out anybody else being able to stop him. And I think even if he only gets a third of the delegates in Indiana, he is still on track to get the nomination.
Yeah, let's talk about, so many people have said they want to see Donald Trump a little more presidential. He gave a foreign policy speech today. Serious, significant speech. Here's part of it. Get your reaction.
And then there's ISIS. I have a simple message for them. Their days are numbered. I won't tell them where, and I won't tell them how. We have to be unpredictable. And we have to be unpredictable starting now. But they're going to be gone. ISIS will be gone if I'm elected president, and they'll be gone quickly. They will be gone very, very quickly.
He also talked about China. He talked about Russia. He talked about radical Islam. He talked about building up our nation's military, taking care of our veterans. It was long. It was substantive. A relationship with Israel and other countries. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, I read the speech on the way out here, and I saw part of it at the airport waiting for the plane. And first of all, I thought on television, he looked presidential, he looked serious, he looked controlled, and overall I thought it was a good presentation. The speech itself is a very serious speech, and I think you're going to find it ridiculed by some of the Washington establishment, in part because it challenges so many of their assumptions. But I think his challenges are pretty useful. He has a very bold view of Russia and China, something which will startle all of the traditional, anti-Russian, anti-Chinese mantra. But what he's saying is pretty straightforward, which is the first stage ought to be, is there a way to get to a relationship that is friendlier rather than more hostile? Now, that's kind of the opposite of what people would have expected him to say a year ago, and tells you that he's been thinking about the U.S.'s role in the world, and how do you end this cycle now running for 15 years of us losing young men and women in wars that don't get won, don't accomplish anything, and leave us, frankly, a weaker country and a country that's mired down in a number of places. And I think he's trying to wrestle with that.
It's a very complicated issue. It's frustrating to me when 5,000 Americans get killed, Iraq, Afghanistan, many thousands more injured. They win Mosul, Fallujah, Ramadi, and Tikrit, and then we give back the land, and then ISIS takes it over. Or 58,000 people in Vietnam are killed, and then we pull out because all of these wars then get argued through the prism of Washington politics. We don't fight these wars to win them anymore. I don't think we can risk American treasure and lose that treasure going forward any further. Do you?
Well, a large part of what Trump said on that topic is exactly what Reagan said in 81, 82. What was called at that time the Weinberger Doctrine, which is you don't go to war unless you're going to win. If you do go to war, you go to war with overwhelming force. He's clearly sending a very clear signal. He's going to rebuild the American military, which it desperately needs. His report on the decline in the size of the military, the size of the Navy, the size of the Air Force, how old some of our equipment is, all those things are, I think, very, very solid. And I think that you're going to see somebody here who wants to, this is complicated for the news media and for the Washington elites to understand. He wants to rebuild American strength to minimize the need to use it on the grounds that if you're overwhelmingly powerful, people don't come and play with you.
That's the
so
Reagan
they recognize
doctrine.
You're going to win.
Yeah.
That's the Reagan doctrine.
We'll come back. We'll continue more with Newt Gingrich right after the break. Also coming up, Donald Trump surpasses Mitt Romney's vote total from 2012, and there are still 10 contests left in this 2016 primary race. Our own Fox and Friends Heather Nauert will join us with a full report. And later, Dr. Ben Carson and Herman Cain, they weigh in on last night's primary results and Senator Cruz's VP pick. Plus, find out which celebrities are threatening to leave the country if Donald Trump is elected president. And I have an offer for them. That and more as we continue.
Live from America's news headquarters, I'm Patricia Stark. Tornado warnings are up in the Midwest and South. One storm touching down Wednesday evening in southwest Iowa. In Texas, the Harris County Sheriff's Department says a 62-year-old woman was killed when a tree fell on her house in an area northwest of Houston. The National Weather Service also confirming 3 tornadoes hit North Texas Tuesday night, injuring 4 people. Elsewhere, 3 confirmed tornadoes touching down in Oklahoma, one striking Tulsa, while 2 weaker ones hit near Oklahoma City. No fatalities, but 12 people were injured. For one-time U.S. Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert is sentenced to 15 months in prison after pleading guilty to violating banking laws. He had paid hush money for years to keep past sex abuse quiet. He also lost his Illinois teacher pension since the charges involved former students of Hastert. I'm Patricia Stark, and now back to Hannity.
Welcome back to Hannity. So Republican voters, they're energized this election cycle, and it's led in part by frontrunner Donald Trump. Here now to explain a lot more is Fox and Friends' own Heather Nauert. Heather, what do you got?
Hi there, Sean. Well, Donald Trump has been saying that he is millions of votes ahead of his Republican rivals, and in the numbers, well, they prove that he is right. After sweeping all 5 primary races last night, Trump has now accumulated more than 10.1 million total votes. That's 3 million more votes than his top challenger, Senator Ted Cruz, who has 6.9 million votes. Trump has 6 million more than Governor John Kasich, who racked up almost 3.7 million votes. And if you look at the total 2016 Republican contest won, Trump has a big advantage with 27 victories compared to Cruz's 11 and Kasich's 1. That was his home state of Ohio. And then there is this interesting figure, Sean. If we look at this from a historical perspective, Trump is on pace to set the Republican record for total votes won. He's already surpassed Mitt Romney's 2012 primary and caucus total of 9.8 million votes, and there are still 10 races to go, including California, and of course, that one is massive. Sean, we'll keep a close eye on the story and get back to you.
All right, Heather, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Back with reaction to that is former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. That is a pretty amazing figure. Now, if you add to that, so 2016 GOP turnout up 60%, Democratic turnout depressed down 20 to 30%. You've got to interpret that if you're a Republican, that there's a wide open field for them to win a general election. But Hillary often outperforms in these hypothetical matchups. Why?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think in the short run, the country's had, a long time, 24 years, to get used to Hillary Clinton. She has a base in the Democratic Party that's very stable. They're going to vote for her under almost any circumstance. And Trump is still both largely unknown and largely shaped by the news media. So if you're an independent or a weak Democrat, but you haven't been part of the Republican primary process, all of your understanding of Trump is mediated through the news media, who are not exactly his friends. The question is, if you look at exactly what you just said, here's a guy who is bringing lots of new people into the party. He's bringing people in who are switching, by the way, from Democrat to Republican to vote in the Republican primary. We have every evidence that there's a continued increase in interest in what he's doing. And I'm always amazed at all these folks who have been consistently wrong for a year. At every stage for a year, they've underestimated Trump. They now tell us about the general election. My advice is he will run a different general election than any of us can imagine, just as he has run a different primary than any of us could have imagined. And I'd sort of wait to see how Trump solves these problems before I'd assume that folks who don't have a clue are the right ones to tell us what's going to happen.
You know, you actually made a lot of news last night when you were on the program, and you said, get over it as it relates to the establishment. You know, a couple of stories out there that I actually found this pretty funny, and this was in the Washington Examiner. You know, some House conservatives are warning Trump to keep their promises. Well, isn't that one of the problems we've had, is that House Republicans did not keep their promises? They've shown no willingness to fight President Obama and stop his agenda, use the power of the purse, or repeal the parts of Obamacare they could, or stop executive amnesty. Didn't they kind of cause that themselves? Who are they to lecture?
Well, look, I think, again, there are factions in the House Republican Party who have different approaches to these things. Certainly the Freedom Caucus sees itself as a very hardline group. But I think what will be a surprise to everybody is that Trump wants to get things done and wants to move towards making Washington governable again. And I suspect he's going to actually be a pretty reliable partner with Paul Ryan in trying to think through what can we do to get back to a balanced budget? What can we do to protect America's interests? How do we rebuild the American military? A point he said in passing today. How do we fix the Veterans Administration, which is a corrupt disaster? I think he's going to be very aggressive about moving on these kind of issues, and I think you'll find a large part of the House Republican Party very eager to work with him, and frankly, a good number of senators will find that they have things they can do with Trump that they may not have expected.
You know, I want to talk strategically, tactically. Whoever the nominee is, in the case of Trump, he made the statement that he's ready to hit the Hillary scandal encyclopedia, Crooked Hillary. Is that the best strategy?
Well, I think it's an inevitable strategy because there are, between the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton interest groups, the various businesses and governments that have tried to manipulate the State Department, her total failure to use her emails in a professional way, fitting national security. I mean, there's so much, you know, think of Hillary as sort of this mound of scandals of various kinds. You can hardly ignore them. But I think there's a bigger issue. Hillary is the personification of the bureaucratic welfare state that has failed. My hope is that Trump is going to decide to take the same aggressiveness, the same boldness, the same energy that he's used in the Republican primary and go into places like Southside Chicago, go into Baltimore, go into places where you can draw a real contrast and ask people, do you really want to keep the same failures in charge, ruining your lives, ruining your neighborhoods, crippling your children's future, or are you ready to try something really different? I think if Trump has got the nerve to do that, it could be an extraordinary election this fall.
Let's talk a little bit about Terry McAuliffe. Speaking of corruption, I mean, he announced that he's restoring the voting rights of 206,000 felons, including violent felons, in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, this is a purple state, a swing state, an important state. Is this to help Hillary?
Well, you have to assume it is, but, you know, the key question in Virginia is a constitutional one. The governor clearly has the power to commute individual sentences. There's really serious legal question whether he can commute 206,000 as a block. And I think that's something that has to be looked at very seriously. And as you point out, to say that everybody who has been a convicted felon will now automatically have their rights back, including some people who've committed the kind of crimes that, frankly, might have led to a lifetime sentence of various kinds. I think you got to look at it more carefully. Now, to be honest, 37 states have followed the notion that once you've served your time, you get the right to vote again. So there has been a long movement towards trying to reintegrate people back into society if they paid for the crime and if their sentence is over. But the way McAuliffe did it was classically Terry McAuliffe. It was crude, it was one-sided, it was a surprise, and it makes him look fairly dumb, frankly.
You we've had the never Trump, never Cruz movement. Cruz supporters don't like Trump supporters. Trump supporters don't like Cruz supporters. Governor Rick Scott of Florida weighed in, and he is saying he's calling on the Stop Trump movement to disband. Do you worry about unity in a general election?
Sure. I mean, first of all, we ought to have a Never Hillary movement.
That's what I said.
Remind everybody in the other movements they ought to join the Never Hillary movement. Second, and this will be interesting to watch, Trump now describes himself as the presumptive nominee. Fine. That means the burden is on him to unify the party now. The burden isn't on the losers. The burden's on the winner. And he had better figure out a strategy between now and Cleveland to bring these folks back in, because he will have beaten them. He will be standing astride the party. But in order to make sure that a third of the party doesn't walk out, he's going to have to figure out how to accommodate them. That will be an interesting test of the art of the deal.
All right. Wow. Well said. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, thanks for being with us.
Take care.
Coming up, Senator Ted Cruz announced that he's picking Carly Fiorina to be his VP if he wins the nomination. How is this going to impact the 2016 race? We'll check in with Dr. Benjamin Carson and Herman Cain. That's next. And later, more analysis of Donald Trump's foreign policy speech with Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Waleed Fares. Plus, all these celebrities are promising to leave the country if Trump wins the White House in 2016. We're going to tell you who they are, and I have a special offer for them. Straight ahead.
After a great deal of time and thought, after a great deal of consideration and prayer, I have come to the conclusion that if I am nominated to be President of the United States, that I will run on a ticket with my vice presidential nominee, Carly Fiorina.
All right, that was Senator Ted Cruz earlier today announcing that Carly Fiorina is his pick for vice president if he, in fact, wins the GOP nomination. Here with reaction, former 2016 presidential candidate Dr. Benjamin Carson and the author of The Right Problems, Fox News contributor, radio host, WSB in Atlanta, and nationally syndicated, Herman Cain. Sir, how are you?
I'm great, Sean. Thank you.
All right, first, your reaction to the announcement, and do you think this helps?
Well, you know, in football, they call it a Hail Mary, and it works about 1% of the time. This is a Hail Carly, and I don't think it's going to work. Now, that's no disrespect to Carly Fiorina, Ted Cruz, because Carly and Ted Cruz, as well as Dr. Carson, who's on with me tonight, and you, along with Donald Trump, were amongst my pick 6 8 months ago. I have a lot of respect for all of them. I just don't think at this point, since Ted Cruz has no path to winning the nomination on the first ballot and possibly the second ballot, that naming the VP candidate now really is going to add any momentum to his campaign. I don't think it will work, but I respect both of them.
I respect them both, too. And by the way, and I said this earlier, Carly Fiorina, I think single-handedly was one of the most effective at prosecuting the case against Hillary Clinton. Dr.
Yes.
Carson, do you agree with Herman Cain? Do you think this is a Hail Mary? Do you think this helps? Traditionally, historically, VP selections don't really impact races.
No, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I think it's a good pick. I've known Carly for 20 years. We joined the Kellogg board on the same day, 19 years ago, and she's very smart. But the fact of the matter is, the numbers are what they are. And there is no pathway whereby Ted Cruz can get the nomination without some manipulation of the system that will significantly alter the will of the people. And that is what the Republicans must recognize. I think many of the establishment do not understand what the impact of that will be.
Yeah. What do you think? You talked about your top 6, Herman Cain.
Yes.
And I think this is really important. I'm worried about the intensity out there, the anger, the resentment, especially between Cruz supporters, Trump supporters. Look, Donald Trump now clearly has he's the only person that can get to 1237. The only way that people can stop him is getting to a contested convention and preventing him from getting to 1237. At the end of all of this, do you think they are going to put aside their differences and unite with the common purpose of defeating Hillary Clinton and ostensibly a third Obama term?
If they want to preserve the Republican Party, and if they want a victory in November for a Republican nominee, they will have to put aside all of that resentment. The only thing that hasn't changed yet, Sean, as you know, that I'm disappointed in is that the Never Trump, anti-Trump movement appears to not be letting up when the voice of the people is being heard. This is what they don't understand, and I don't understand why they're digging in their heels. I respect Ted for trying to do something. He did the alliance with Governor Kasich. That appeared to have backfired, in my opinion. If you look at the overwhelming results from the primaries yesterday, now he's trying something else. Well, he's going to keep trying, but like Dr. Carson said, I don't think this is going to add any unexpected momentum to his campaign at this time. The people are speaking. The voice of the people is the most important thing that's coming through this Republican primary, and there are too many people that are ignoring it.
And it may end up, if the numbers hold up and continue the way they've been going, that Donald Trump will accumulate more votes than any nominee in the history of the Republican Party. Dr. Carson, you started out with 17 people. I understand, and by the way, all of them good people. I could make the case for all 17 of you that you would be better presidential material than Hillary Clinton. Your supporters were disappointed. Marco Rubio's supporters were disappointed. Scott Walker's, Rick Perry, all good people. Is there any chance you see a possible coalition of some of the best and brightest in the Republican Party that has a deep bench, problem solvers, joining together in an administration to fix the mess we're currently in? Is that a pipe dream on my part?
No, I don't think it's a pipe dream at all, and I think it will become a reality because the people that you just mentioned and some others recognize that if we don't do that and we throw the election to Hillary or a Hillary substitute, and they get 2, 3, or 4 Supreme Court picks, that will be the end of America as we know it. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that has come out of the Supreme Court with the numbers that we have now. Can you imagine what will happen with a more progressive Supreme Court?
And Trump is going to have a series of these speeches. We'll get into his foreign policy speech from earlier today, but he...
Always put the interests of the American people and American security above all else. Has to be first. Has to be.
We'll have more reaction to Donald Trump's major foreign policy speech from earlier today. Plus, find out the names of celebrities that threaten to leave the country if Trump is elected. I have an offer for them. That's coming up straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. So last night, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump scored several big primary wins, and they wasted no time turning their focus towards a general election face-off. Watch this.
The other day, Mr. Trump accused me of playing the, quote, woman card. Well, if fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
I'll do far more for women than Hillary Clinton will ever do. The only card she has is the woman's card. She's got nothing else going. And frankly, if Hillary Clinton were a man, I don't think she'd get 5% of the vote. The only thing she's got going is the woman's card. And the beautiful thing is, women don't like her.
Joining us now with reaction, conservative columnist A.J. Delgado from the Federalist D.C. McAllister's with us, and the founder and president of High Noon Strategies, Lisa Booth. All right, I'm asking all three of you this question. Is Hillary screaming hurting her? I'll start with you, A.J.
I don't know if it's the screaming that's hurting her. It's really her record and the fact that she's somebody that has ridden her husband's coattails to becoming the presidential contender. That's why you see her unfavorability rating among women is in the 50s. So it might be the screaming isn't going to help, but really, Sean, it's just a matter of who she is and how she got to where she is. She's just not likable. She's not a role model.
Yeah. What do you think, D.C. McAllister? Do you think she seems to, for whatever reason, we got into this discussion the other night with Geraldo, she just gets louder and louder and screams and screams. It seems like nobody's telling her on her campaign that may not be the best delivery. Your thoughts?
She is very unlikable, and I guess she just has to overcome her deficits by yelling louder. Women do not like her. She's not the kind of feminist that women want. The younger women especially look at her and just see her as a white privileged woman who has ridden her husband's coattails, and so they don't like her a lot. The only problem is that Donald Trump has a women's problem as well, but Hillary Clinton, boy, she has a long ways to go when it comes to attracting them.
What do you think, Lisa?
Well, Sean, I think the bigger point that Donald Trump's trying to make here is the pandering. Hillary Clinton is a prolific panderer. And look, she's trying to play cards that she doesn't even have. She was accused by an African-American radio host before the New York primary of pandering to black voters by saying she carries hot sauce around in her purse. She was accused of hispandering when her campaign pushed out the 7 ways that Hillary Clinton is just like your abuela. And when she tried to pretend like she is just like everyday Americans who take the subway, she was mocked by SNL because it was an epic failure when she tried to use the Metro. So I think that's the broader point that Donald Trump is trying to make here.
That was a pretty funny moment, you got to admit.
Yeah.
You know, they use Metro cards now? AJ, let me go back to you. The one time that Hillary tried the gender card earlier, Donald Trump hit back hard because the issue of Bill Clinton and women, and he actually called Hillary an enabler in that process, going after and smearing and besmirching women that have made allegations against Bill. I don't think she'd get away with it if Donald Trump's the nominee.
Right. And I mean, this is something that she normally gets away with because it's never discussed. It's something you're not supposed to talk about or even mention in the mainstream media. But really, she does have a very shaky record in terms of how she has defamed and criticized, and in some cases, according to some, set out to ruin some of these women's lives that Bill behaves inappropriately with, to put it lightly. And yes, Trump does have the courage to bring that out. And I think the American public, including women, are going to see what's Hillary's real record with women. It's not pretty.
Yeah. What do you think, DC? I know you're not accepting the premise. You're supporting Ted Cruz. So you think the race goes on. Would Ted Cruz prosecute that case in a similar fashion? And should he? Is that the best strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, he should definitely do that. I agree. One thing I do want to say about Trump is that it is nice to see a Republican really be bold and go after Hillary Clinton because we're too soft on her, and we need to attack her. So I think Ted Cruz would also attack her as well, and I think he would be just as bold.
Yeah. What do you, Lisa? What do you think? Your thoughts?
Well, the issue with the Bill Clinton thing is the hypocrisy of it, because Hillary Clinton herself said that every victim has the right to be heard, but we know that she did everything she could to drag Monica Lewinsky's name through the mud, to drag other accusers' name through the mud.
Kathleen Willey, Juanita Broderick. I mean, all of this is going to come up. All of it. All right, let me ask this question, because I think this is fundamental to the case. Hillary is a weak candidate. Hillary doesn't have the ability to, I guess, energize a crowd the way Barack Obama has, or Bernie Sanders, or Donald Trump. She certainly doesn't have the interpersonal skills of her husband, Bill Clinton. She's got ethical issues hanging over her head, but yet she still does okay in matchups, hypothetical matchups. AJ, will that go away?
Yes, because the American public, since we're still in these primaries, has not really had a chance to sit down with two candidates and say, okay, now we have let's watch a debate between the two. Let's look at these two records, not 16 different records of 16 different candidates, and let's see who really has a good record. And really, with women even, Trump has a record throughout his entire career of being a champion of women, including even in the workplace. So once the American public can compare the two, Hillary has no shot.
DC?
I don't think Trump has that great of a record when it comes to women. Like I said, 68 to 70% of women find him unfavorable. They don't like him. Only 58% of women don't like Hillary. So he has a deficit. Plus, we have to remember that people assume that Republican Party.
But he won. I'm sorry, but he won more women yesterday than Ted Cruz did. Trump won more of the women's vote yesterday than Ted Cruz. So who has the women's problem?
Lisa, you're a delegate.
All right, hang on. Ted
Lisa,
Cruz does.
You're in the middle. You're the delegate expert. Does Trump get to 1237?
I think he does, or he gets pretty darn close. But the problem with Hillary Clinton, this is something nobody's talking about. Hillary Clinton does so poorly among women, and she is a woman. Sure, her unfavorables with women voters is 58%. If you look at it in the Midwest, it's 62%. In the South, it's 60%. And Hillary Clinton is a woman, but that's something nobody wants to talk about. They just want to focus on Donald Trump's unfavorables.
All right, guys, good to see you all. Appreciate it. And coming up next, tonight, right here on Hannity.
Our military dominance must be unquestioned, and I mean unquestioned, by anybody and everybody.
Donald Trump, he delivered a major foreign policy speech earlier today. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Walid Faris, they weigh in. Also, you hear about these celebrities? They're vowing to leave the country if Donald Trump becomes president. We'll tell you who they are, and I have an offer for all of them. Straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. So earlier today, 2016 GOP presidential frontrunner Donald Trump delivered a major speech on foreign policy. In case you missed it, here are some of the highlights.
My foreign policy will always put the interests of the American people and American security above all else. America first will be the major and overriding theme of my administration. Our military dominance must be unquestioned, and I mean unquestioned, by anybody and everybody. Our goal is peace and prosperity, not war and destruction. The best way to achieve those goals is through a disciplined, deliberate, and consistent foreign policy. With President Obama and Secretary Clinton, we've had the exact opposite.
Here with analysis tonight, the author of Defeating Jihad, The Winnable War, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, as well as one of Trump's foreign policy advisors, Fox News terrorism analyst Walid Faris. Dr. Gorka, let me start with you, and I agree with you. We can defeat ISIS. One of the things Trump said is we're too predictable, that he's not going to telegraph what the strategy is going to be, but he will hit them and hit them hard. That would be a shift in foreign policy. Oh, we're going to war. It's only a matter of time. Remember the buildup, for example, to the Iraq War.
Yes, absolutely. And for full disclosure, as the FEC has filed, I did advise Mr. Trump last year, but my wife is actually on Senator Cruz's national security team. So I've been waiting a long time for this speech. The fact is, this would be a sea change, but still, I don't see enough meat here on the bone. And the speech he gave today is in various places ultimately contradictory. So whether it's nuclear weapons, I'll stand with...
Well, he said he's going to build up our nuclear weapons. He will rebuild our defenses. He talked about China,
Right.
Russia, radical Islam, terrorists, ISIS. Where was the contradiction?
Let me give you a couple of examples. Look, the first one is we're going to build up our nuclear forces because they're so important. And then he talks about how nuclear weapons are so horrific. Well, which is it? Secondly, he says we're going to stand by our agreements, but we're going to rip up the Iranian deal. Well, which is it? And then he talked about his
Well, he's talking about with our allies versus an enemy. I think that's fairly obvious, right?
Well, yeah, but he talked about trust us, and our word stands. Well, which is it? Does our word stand or doesn't it? And on top of that, the whole relationship with
let me go to Walid.
People have to.
Yeah, but this is important. But I think he's, my interpretation, he was distinguishing between how we treat our enemies and whether or not people will be our real allies. That was my interpretation. What's yours?
Absolutely, that's the case. He was very clear in where it begins, the genesis, the security of the American people, the interest of the American people, and he was very clear where we're going. Unlike the Obama-Clinton administration, which failed in Libya, failed in Iraq, failed in Syria, and maybe now in Yemen. So what Mr. Trump is trying to say, we need to revise these strategies, we need to revise these policies over the past 7 to 8 years, but also over the past 20 years. And as you just said, Sean, the issue with regard to ISIS, you have to have a decision to dismantle, not to contain. That's a 3 miles wide difference with the current administration. With regard to the Iran deal, this is a deal basically that is harming the region, and of course you're going to revise it. You're not going to revise and dismantle NATO.
I'm running out of time. Dr. Gorka, did you view this as presidential? You say you want more meat on the bone, but a good step for you?
Well, I was impressed by his ability to read a teleprompter. But again, are we going to stand by Israel? Are we going to rip up our deals or stand by them?
He was very clear on Israel.
Yeah, but he also said what? He said our allies must defend themselves, no more freeloaders. Well, which is it? Are we going to stand by and assist Israel, or is everybody going to have to defend themselves? So it's a different quality of speech. It's an improvement.
Walid will give you the last word. What did you think?
where the criticism flies from one point to another and doesn't see in between. He's the only one who spoke about the ideology of radical Islamism should be addressed and mentioned the actual organization, the Muslim Brotherhood. I think this is 100 miles more advanced than the past.
We gotta leave it there, guys. Boy, we could talk about this all night. Thank you both. When we come back, we need your help with our question of the day, and we'll tell you which celebrities are threatening to leave the country if Donald Trump is elected, and I have an offer for all of them straight ahead. All right, time for our question of the day. So, do you think Donald Trump is the presumptive Republican nominee or not? Go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, @Sean Hannity on Twitter. Let us know what you think. All right, finally, I've been telling you all night, here are the celebrities who said they're going to leave the country if Donald Trump becomes president. Lena Dunham, Miley Cyrus, Samuel L. Jackson, Cher, Al Sharpton, Raven-Symoné, Jon Stewart, Eddie Griffin have all vowed to leave the country if Donald Trump wins. I have an offer for them. I will give you a one-way ticket to the country of your choice with the stipulation that you promise never to come back. The offer stands. But that's all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.